Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and I'm back for this one this week. And as per usual, Scott and Joris are here as well. Guys, how you doing this evening?
Hi guys, hope you're well, and I hope everyone at home is well.
I'm probably better than Scott this week.
That is probably an understatement for sure, given this weekend's results. Let's quickly go through them before we dive into all the action. Friday night, Union hammered Eupen 4-1. Saturday, Kortrijk shocked Club Brugge, or maybe it's not a shocker these days, 1-0 at home. Molenbeek and Veslo drew 1-1. Charleroi beat Antwerp 3-2. As you always kind of mentioned, Genk hammered Mechelen 4-0. Cercle Bruges beat Ghent 2-0. Stade Liège beat Anderlecht 3-2 in dramatic fashion. And then managerless Leuven showed you don't even need a manager as they beat St. Truden 4-0. Let's start with the table toppers, one of the more informed sides in the league against one of the least informed sides in the league, Union against Eupen in Brussels. Obviously, kind of tension and emotion, I guess, around this one after the incident that happened during the international break in the capital city. And yeah, obviously all of our well wishes go to the families of those that were affected. It's just awful, awful stuff. And it was, I guess, kind of fitting. You can say that the opening score was Gustav Nilsson, obviously from Sweden himself. Loic Lapper some fantastic work down the left. He puts it in. Nilsson, he had to stretch really well, and he's a big bloke to head it in. Held up the two in a mark of respect for the two that lost their lives. And then, yeah, Union just went on a little bit of a rampage. Cameron Puertas with some lovely feet. He finds Rasmussen with the outside of his foot. He smashes it into the far corner. A couple more chances for Union in the second half before Mohamed Amoura ran onto a long ball to make it 3-0. Eupen did get one back from a set piece when Victor Paulsen headed in, but literally a minute later, Kabangu got his first goal for Union to make it 4-1. I mean, guys, Eupen, that's a ridiculous amount of defeats on the bounce now. We praised them at the beginning of the season. Then I think Joris, you were one of the first to mention that they always do really well to begin the season. It's just how long they can sustain it for. And they haven't really sustained it at all. They're now dropping into the bottom four, minus 12 goal difference, just leaking goals left, right and centre. Obviously against a very good Union side, but some of their defending was just abysmal. Has to be said. I think for the Rasmussen goal, no one tracked his run. None of that midfield dropped in to track him, and they were around him to be able to do it. It feels at times that Paulsen's basically defending on his own. Slanina hasn't really got a chance with many of the goals that did go in. So, yeah, they could have been worse as well when Van Hoot looked like he had scored, but VAR overruled it. So, definitely back to the drawing board for Florian Kohfeldt. For Blessing, doesn't need to go back to the drawing board because they just keep on rolling. Good times in Brussels for them, but bad times for the Pandas.
Yeah, well, we used the word, I think, free fall recently when we were talking about Eupen, didn't we? And that's kind of very much continuing. That's their sixth straight loss. And in that time, they've only scored 5, but they've conceded 17 over those 6 defeats, but they've conceded 26 in total, so they've conceded more than anyone else now. So it's kind of obvious to identify what the immediate problem is, but they're not doing enough to kind of want getting anything out of any games at the moment. I think there's a few issues rumbling there. The biggest one, obviously, is the psychological impact of the free fall. You can tinker with things to try and address the defensive issues, and there's plenty that probably could and should be ongoing there in terms of the work that goes on in the training ground with Florian Kohfeldt and his staff. But my worry is just that cumulative effect of a situation that psychologically gets out of hand very, very quickly. So yeah, they're in trouble really, I think, because they have a sticky schedule coming up as well. Although there are games there that when you look at, you think, okay, well, they should get some points from some of these games. You would have no confidence that they're going to do that at the moment. Unfortunately, the way that they're playing, and actually 4-1, could have been so much more than that. in truth. Union were well out of sight really by half time. The game was over very early, totally dominant. As Ben was saying, really fitting that Gustav Nielsen would open the scoring this past weekend after the terrible events in Brussels on Monday evening. Extraordinary scenes, really. Those who are watching what will happen will know that, home fans at the National Stadium, the King Berouan, were kept inside the stadium for their own safety until around 11:30 on Monday evening. It was before hours after the game would have finished before they felt it was safe to do so, obviously, because the gunman was still on the loose, as it were. Extraordinary stuff. But yeah, really fitting that a Swede would open the scoring, and a very interesting goal celebration as well. As Ben was saying, it was obvious to everybody what that indication was. Worth highlighting, certainly for me anyway, Mohamed Amoura continues to be a bit of a revelation and a real star. 5 goals and 7 appearances now, and he's looking like a really, really good pickup for Union. A player who offers a lot, and he came on and did more damage this weekend, and he didn't even start the game. So I think Alexander Bresson is going to be feeling really good about the way things are at the moment, especially with other sides in and about them dropping points this weekend. And Union are kind of on a degree of cruise control, I think.
In the last 4 games, they have scored 14 goals. League games, that is, of course, there is the game in Liverpool at Anfield as well still, but nonetheless, that is an impressive streak. That they'll also, my next point is actually coming from that, I guess, as well. They already have 3 strikers with at least 5 goals already. Like Ben mentioned as well, Kabangu also now opened his score sheet. So yeah, that's it's looking very dangerous up front for sure. And I want to highlight another player actually, Cameron Puertas, who in these 4 games then also has had at least 1 assist in all of them. I believe this time it was 2 even. I'm not completely sure, but anyway, he has a lot of assists, and I believe he's also the assist king of the league so far. So yeah, all looking really well for Union and for Puertas and for all the strikers. The one small caveat, but okay, like I said, they already have 3 strikers who have 5 already. Nilsson also got off injured by the end of the game. I do not know if that is something serious, or if it's if it did, or if we actually have any news on that. But even that probably wouldn't harm them too much if he would be out for a little while. It didn't look that serious, I think, but okay. I won't go into that, but and let's hope it still isn't something bad, obviously. But just a really impressive strike force at the moment. And I guess you guys said everything here already. 6 defeats in a row. That's just trouble as well in this specific game. Certain areas were of the pitch were left way too open at times. Both the first 2 goals came from the same area of the pitch. The build up was a bit different still, of course, but from the same side. And a lot of space left on that last side. And I have to say, Nuhu is really their main man at the moment, and I feel like he is definitely not prolific enough to be the main man if you're fighting to avoid relegation. Of course, in this game particularly, he was a bit off the mark. I guess he really missed quite some chances, but I guess that can happen one game, but unfortunately we have seen more games of that as well. Of course, also in this game against Union, I guess out of these 6 losses, this is not one they would be too mad about. But of course, they need to turn that page at some point, and it still didn't happen. And now indeed some interesting games coming up for them.
Yeah, they could really do with picking up some sort of confidence, I guess, from these next couple of games. Charleroi, Houston in the Cup, St. Truiden, Molenbeek, like all those sort of teams. I don't know. I think we both all forgot to mention that Nathan Bittum Mazzala also got sent off in this game, and I just got to thinking about their kind of relationship with PSG and kind of the players that have come across and how kind of like non-impactful any of them have actually been on the team, like at all. Like Bitter Mazzala, like barely plays. Garrison Innocent barely plays. Teddy Allo, I don't think he's too great either. Like it's, I don't like everything's kind of just a little bit weird at that club at the moment, and like that link with PSG has never really brought anything dramatically good in terms of on the playing pitch. And I don't know. I can see a very real situation where Florian Kofeld gets sacked just because of the performances on the pitch, and it's just kind of without the decision makers looking at themselves and looking at what they've given him in terms of a squad. I just don't. I don't. I feel like they're very quick to be like, yeah, we'll get someone else in and hope that somehow they'll make this situation with the players that they've got work. But I just can't really see it working. And I think you guys have highlighted it there, especially you guys with the Nuhu situation, where like if he's your main man, that is an issue, and there's nothing within the squad to kind of rectify that issue, unless Finn Bogerson can really roll back the years, which isn't probably going to happen. It's safe to say, although he did score during the international break, so maybe. But I think that was against like Liechtenstein or someone like that. So I mean, not the toughest of opponents there. Let's go to Saturday's games and let's go to Kortrijk, where they hosted Club Brugge, who not as bad as Erpen, obviously, but they are a side out of form at the moment defensively and scoring goals. They are definitely struggling, and Dyler's definitely coming under a little bit of pressure. That it definitely wasn't helped by this game. They had a couple of chances early on, but Tom Vandenberg made some really, really good saves. Hugo Vetlesen was dispossessed in the Kortrijk half, and the counter-attack was fantastic. David Hennen with the ball through to Isaac Davis. We've seen this script before with Davis running through and then finding the back of the net. So that made it 1-0 in around about the 35th minute. Into the second half, before we got into the second half, Mignolet absolutely booted, was it Idrissi? El Idrissi, I think it was, just absolutely booted him and just got nothing for it. Like nothing happened, which we were saying anyone else on the pitch, it's a red card, and probably any other goalkeeper, but we're not going to dive into any conspiracy theories on this podcast. Midway through the second half, Club were awarded a penalty. Thiago Rodriguez running into the box. I don't think this is a penalty because he initiates the contact with Canna, and as Canna falls down, he takes down Rodriguez. But Rodriguez or Thiago, whichever name you want to give him, is the one that's initiated that contact. So I just don't see how it's a penalty because it's a really soft one. It doesn't matter in the end because Andreas Skov-Olsen just chucks it over the bar anyway. There's a couple more chances for Club Brugge. Thiago did actually miss a sitter when he put one wide, and that's becoming an issue at the moment, is him missing a lot of chances. They just seem a little bit cursed, don't they, Club Brugge, when it comes to signing strikers. They just can't find one that's consistently good enough to lead the line, and it's been an issue for so long that it's been kind of papered over the cracks by the rest of the squad, but I don't know, maybe this year's the year where it's finally going to really bite them. But yeah, Kortrijk hold on to record a really, really important win. It's one of those, isn't it, Scott and yours, that like the ones that you don't expect are the ones that are even better when you're in that kind of relegation scrap, because all the sides around you are suddenly put under a lot more pressure because you've picked up a win where you didn't expect to. We also saw GB Sek come off the bench, the youngster that they signed a couple of weeks ago from Senegal, and he looked like he had a little bit of an exciting kind of role to play. But good start for Glenn de Bock. Ronnie Dyler, though, Scott, he's going to be under pressure, isn't he?
Well, it's Club's worst start to a season in 40 years, so that's the kind of context that he's dealing with at the moment. I mean, there's been quite a lot of talk about this week in various circles. Is there a crisis at Club now? It's obviously very early, I think, to kind of get a bit hysterical about it. That's what I would say about it. But there's no disguising the fact that that 40-year context is pretty bad. And this is a squad that we raved about collectively on the pre-season preview, saying that this was a really good squad that had a tremendous amount of creativity and firepower in it, and they put quite a few goals past some sides very early on without always being entirely convincing, and seem to have really hit a block at the moment. They're dominating games, but without doing very much. I mean, this game was, I use the word kind of brutal to describe it from their perspective this weekend, because again, they completely controlled the game and dominated it, lose a goal through an unfortunate mistake, miss a penalty, apply all of the pressure for the majority of the match, but their use of the ball in the final third is just awful at the moment. The decision making is really strange. And what's that about? I mean, Ronnie Dyler was talking a couple of weeks ago after the defeat at Sclesien about, controlling the game again and not being able to use the ball effectively in the final third, and it was that they needed to address. And if anything, that problem has got worse. But for me, like, when I watch them, I think they just seem to lack a kind of leader on the pitch. There's lots of players there who are capable of damaging the opposition, but nobody really seems to be kind of taking control or charge of that. There's a lot of huffing and puffing and going on, but nobody really rolling their sleeves up particularly and taking responsibility, perhaps with the exception of Skov Olsen, who you can see is always looking for the offensive out. It's interesting, Ben was talking about Thiago. I would, and this is just my own view, I'd be starting Jutgla ahead of him every day of the week, personally. I just think he offers you more up front. I think Thiago's a very particular profile of striker, and I'm not sure, despite the fact that he hasn't, I don't think he's been poor, I'm not saying that at all, but I do think there's something about his profile that doesn't really fit what they're trying to do. I think Jutgla is more creative, more unpredictable, capable of more, actually. That's why I just have a preference for him ahead of Thiago. That's something that we might see a little change up in as well. As Ronnie Dyler searches for an answer to who his main man might be. I think he's decided it's Thiago, which is why he's sticking with him. But that's just one of a number of issues rolling on at the moment. But yeah, nobody seems to be taking responsibility for me. And there's some real dilemmas there for Ronnie Dyler, because they've got a busy schedule coming up, some really tricky fixtures as well. They've also got the Bruges Derby coming up shortly as well against Cercle, who are now above them in the table, which, if they remain above them in the table, come round that fixture in a couple of weeks or so, that's going to add real spice to that fixture as well. But yeah, certainly the pressure increasing, and Bart Verheijen admitting over the last few days that they are definitely going to look at perhaps spending a little bit in January, if things don't improve noticeably before then. So they're definitely keeping their options open.
Yeah, that schedule is the one thing that Nyla needs to pick up some points, because there's 3 games left. No, there's 4 games left. Sorry, for in the first round of fixtures, let's say it like that. And the next 3 at least are all against teams above them, which is a bit of an example of how bad they actually have been so far as well. That it has come so far. And of course, they also have Europe and the cup fixture in the mix as well, as Scott mentioned briefly already as well. So definitely some worrying times for Dyla, coming off for the worst start in 40 years. So yeah, good luck turning that around. To be fair, on the Jutgla Thiago discussion, or the opinions, I find it difficult to say. I also still feel Jutgla might have overperformed in these first months. I was talking about Union having 3 strikers who have scored more than 5 goals this season. Well, Club Brugge have barely 1. That is indeed Jutgla, who has 6 in the whole year. Not season, but in the whole of 2023. Of course, there were other players pitching in for them, so that it's a bit of an unfair comparison here. But he got 6 goals, and 3 of them have come on the last game of the last season against Eupen, where well, they trashed them, but well, that it was a game where Eupen already had given up, I suppose, as well. But yeah, just to pitch in a bit on that debate, or to give some more context to the situation, it is not an easy puzzle to solve. Of course, it's not only about the goals as well. Of course, I know that, but yeah, nonetheless, it is an important factor for a striker. Yeah, 5 league games without a win now, 2 losses in a row. Well, just to also put more context to that, we're starting 40 years, I suppose. And also, this time was their first shutout in the league, and that makes me jump to Kortrijk as well, where they had their first clean sheet in this campaign so far. And yeah, with some help of the woodwork a few times, and of course that missed penalty as well. But nonetheless, they did get that over the line. And well, Davies is proving to be an important player for them as well, higher up on the pitch. Whether it will be enough to keep them in the league, still a different question. But they did really, manage had a good weekend, of course, as well. Now they seem to like playing Brugge-based teams because they've got 2 wins now, and both of them have come against the teams that are based in Bruges and at home as well. So yeah, and they're really picking up some form now as well. So that's some encouraging signs for Kortrijk. Whether it will be a longer lasting effect is something we will all have to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a result of their win, Westerlo obviously then put under a little bit more pressure to do something. Basically, obviously they had beaten Kortrijk, but they went to Molenbeek, who are in pretty decent form themselves since coming up. Struggling a little bit recently, but they had some toughish games against Gent, Union, and Antwerp, which had come out reasonably unscathed. But I think they'd have been looking at this one on paper as one that they could kind of get another win, put the ship back on track, and all that sort of stuff. Matchday did hit the post in the first half. He probably should have done a little bit better with that one. Molenbeek looked quite lively, especially in the second half. The beginning of the second half, they kind of dominated most of the ball, most of the possession. They were pressing really, really well. Westerlo, it's a little bit of 6s and 7s with Sinan Bollat having to put off a couple of saves. The opening goal just after the hour mark came after a really, really nice flick from Ile Kamala. His kind of flick around the corner found an on-rushing Florent da Silva. He smashed it straight at Bollat. It just kind of, I'm trying to think how to describe it. It kind of went in through kind of like in Crazy Golf, if you hit it into like a tunnel, and it will hit the corner of the tunnel and then come out on the other side near the hole. It was kind of that, like went into Bollat and then hit the corner of like his knee and then hit the bottom corner of the goal to give them a 1-0 head start. They should have scored a couple more, in my opinion. They had the chances, they had the ball a lot of the time, but Westerlo kind of stuck in there. Matsuro should have given them an equaliser late on in the game, but his shot was straight at Deforney. He couldn't make anything better. However, Westerlo did get themselves an equaliser late in the game, 94th minute. Griffin Yao, I mean, we've probably never mentioned Griffin Yao on this podcast, apart from maybe during a pre-season preview. Literally joined from DC United, then just disappeared into the ether. He reappeared from the ether in this one, came on the 72nd minute. He was given far too much space, wasn't tracked properly on the right-hand side by Molenbeek, so on Westerlo's left, drove into the box. His shot, like, the more I see it, the more I think, I don't really get what Deforney's doing. Like, he makes it look like it's got more power, more accuracy than it actually did. It looks like one that he should, with the form he's been in, have saved. He didn't. Yao gets the equaliser. Westerlo get a point. It keeps them, they just remain on the bottom, but they're just a point behind Kortrijk at this moment in time. 3 points off of Eupen, but 4 points off of Mechelen. I guess it's kind of like a frustrating result for everyone all round. Westerlo, it had been a nice chance to get another win and build some more momentum. I mean, technically, yeah, they are unbeaten in 4, but I just really wasn't convinced with them in this game. And I think De Rock's he's searching so much. Like, the central midfield partnership's completely different from last season. Everyone's kind of chopping and changing. He's really, really searching for something Whereas for Molenbeek, they, in my opinion, should have won this game. They should have scored a couple more goals, and they'll be just as frustrated having not taken the 3 points.
Yeah, it was a slightly strange game. There wasn't much in it. A draw was probably a fair result on the balance of chances. Westerlo obviously getting what I thought was ultimately a deserved last gasp equaliser. I thought Westerlo were marginally the better side in the sense that I think ultimately they created the better chances. I think if Ben was saying, if Molenbeek had taken some of the chances they'd created, they probably would have won the game. Erdon Dake had a really horrendous miss fairly early on in the first half. One of those where he was left on the ground, covering his face, hoping that the earth was going to open up and swallow him. It was one of those, and nothing seems to be going for Westerlo at the moment. And Ben's right. I think Jonas de Rock is tinkering with lots of things and just trying to find a balance that can get some rhythm going. I felt, generally they were a little bit better this week, a little bit more connected. I think across the pitch, a bit more structured and intent to their play. I thought, they started quite positively with the right levels of intensity and aggression. And I thought, okay, right, well, they just seemed brighter. Didn't really get any reward for it this weekend. And it's a difficult one. I mean, it's interesting because the owners are sticking with Jonas de Rock at the moment, which is obviously unusual. I think, a lot of other managers in this position would probably find themselves out by now. I think what piles the pressure on is obviously Kortrijk winning against Club slightly unexpectedly. That made this game even more pressurised, I think, from a Westerlo point of view, because obviously this game kicked off after everyone knew the result of that game, which may or may not have had an impact on Westerlo's performance. But yeah, they're searching, and I saw some small improvements. So it's just whether I think the owners stick with the Rock a little bit longer, which I think they probably should. For the moment, because I'm not sure a change and assuming that somebody coming in is going to give them any kind of a bounce at all, and it is still early yet, so it's just unfortunate that I suppose from a Westerlo perspective, particularly, other results did very much go against them this weekend. Molenbeek probably will be a little bit disappointed, like Ben says, but getting a point isn't really the end of the world, and they've been picking up points unexpectedly in games as well, and will be, I think, reasonably kind of happy with that on the whole. But yeah, Westerlo kind of searching for just the right recipe, and a bit like some other sides, like Standard having a couple of huge back-to-back wins. I think Westerlo will just be hoping for a significant win that might generate some momentum, because we've seen that with a couple of other sides who were going through a sticky spell early and get a result, a couple of results, and the whole picture kind of changes for you. So that one's kind of coming to a conclusion. I felt, just the last point on Westerlo, I was always wondering who was going to jump first, whether it was going to be Kortrijk or Westerlo, and Kortrijk obviously made the change first, and seemed to be seeing some benefits from it. They were very energetic and well organised this weekend, I think. So they look to me like a side who are much more up for a fight than Westerlo at the moment. Westerlo seem to be carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders.
But Jonas de Roek had a very smart saying, I believe, there, that they didn't really care about not losing that spot, that he's not looking at that spot because they need to look at the spots higher up, because, well, last or second last doesn't really matter. Second bottom, it doesn't matter. You end up the same. So in that sense as well, their recent pickup in form, picking up these points, even though too many of them have been draws, 3 of these 4 unbeaten games were draws. And that win against Kortrijk, of course, that would have been really important, and still will be. But definitely the smart comment. Okay, also a bit to put off some pressure, I suppose, on both his side and himself. But again, like since he made that change to the back 3 or back 5, how you see it, that was the first time against Standard. They actually haven't lost a game yet, so there are many ways of looking at things, even though they just narrowly escaped in this one, and in a few other ones in these games as well. Performance levels haven't not necessarily been much better, but it seems to bring a bit more that what they need. But of course, they are still lacking a bit of confidence and striking power, I guess, a bit as well. Yeah, Bolat had a really weird game again. Like he looked extremely shaky, but on the other hand, he did save them at the most important moments in the game, I suppose, as well. But yeah, and additionally, relatively weird fact and well, good fact for Westerlo is that they're the only away side that actually took any point this week. So that's encouraging, I suppose. Definitely. On Molenbeek, I do not have that much to be fair. Again, dropping points in extra time, though. Of course, 2 weeks or two games in a row that they have that dropping points in extra time. Instead, that makes for 1 out of 6 instead of a 6 out of 6. And well, they could use these points at this stage of the season. They are indeed dropping off a bit in form and need a win as well. So this could have been the occasion, but they're now winless in 6 games, I believe, as well, or in 5. The last win was against Cercle Brugge in the middle of September. Yeah, though, and they have been close to it. Well, on more than one occasion there as well. So they desperately need a win at the time as well. So far, they're still in a relatively comfortable position, but it's really only a matter of a few points, and so that's why these 5 drop points inside the last 2 games, that could really haunt them later on in the season.
Yeah, definitely frustration all round, I guess, for both sides. I think for Molenbeek, because I do feel like they're missing Biron up front. I think he was pretty decent for them to start the season, and they obviously they're so used to him being kind of the focal point. I wanted to see more of him and Gay playing together because I didn't think they'd reached the connection that they needed just yet. But hopefully, when he comes back, that will definitely help them out. Let's go to Charleroi, where it was the story of the Madagascan Pirlo, as I'm going to now call him, or I've probably been calling him for a while.
You like that? You like that? Checks in the post.
yeah, right. Good old Marco Ilamaricha. We'll get to him in a bit. Charleroi against Antwerp. Lots of spice in the stadium and lots of spice on the benches. Mazu and Van Bommel. I think Mazu told Van Bommel to fuck off at one point. Well, that'd be explicit. Just
one point.
Yeah, they were just not having it at all. Game kind of got into life in the second half. About 5 minutes after the restart, Dragsness, he's been a decent pickup for Charleroi. His ball across. Stulic tapped it in to get, I believe that's his first goal for the club since signing last season. Well, definitely his first goal of this season. I'm pretty sure that would have been his first goal for the club as well. Lead didn't last very long. 6 minutes later, Toby Alderweireld does what Toby Alderweireld does, which is lump balls over the top of the defence, and they're usually pretty accurate. Ekelenkamp knocked it on with his head, smashed it past Coffey with his feet to make it 1-1. However, Charleroi then were awarded a penalty when the ball hit, I believe it was Vermeeren on the arm. Took forever before they eventually went to the TV screen to check this one. Penalty was given. Up stepped Marco Ilamaricha to get his first from the spot. Again, lead didn't last for that much longer. 10 minutes later, Nigerian teenager Eleni Kena came off the bench to get the equaliser in the 76th minute after, I think it was Chidera Ejuke had some quite nice feet in the box, but his shot was pretty rubbish. Ball bounced out, Elakene was there, and he smashed it in really, really nicely. Actually, really, really nice finish from the teenager to make it 1-1. Seconds, with about 3 minutes left. And at this point, I think Mazu and Van Bommel have both been sent off as well. I'm pretty sure if you watch it back, when Elakene, when he scores and it goes to the coaches, one of them's just using one of the hand signals, the universal swearing hand signals towards the Charleroi bench. This it was so crazy. Great. Definitely watch the highlights because this one's hilarious. And Benzo's running through. Balikwisha's tracking back like all good wingers should, but more often than not they make a mistake. He kind of gets himself in a really bad position. So that, but when Benza shapes to shoot, he catches Balikwisha. He goes down. Penalty given. Ilimaricha steps up again to make it 3-2 to Charleroi, and that's how it finishes. Ilimaricha, I guess, kind of a little shameless plug. When I was doing the research for my book on the history of the African Cup of Nations, I'm pretty sure he scores the first ever goal for Madagascar in an AFCON, and it's a ridiculously good free kick. Look it up if you haven't seen it. It's a fantastic strike from him. And his penalties were pretty decent as well, to be fair. Maybe don't mention penalty takers around Antwerp fans too much because it will just give them the heebie-jeebies. Anyway, Charleroi win. Really, really important result for Mazu. I know we were speaking about how they kind of need to get back on track. That's now back-to-back wins. For Antwerp, it kind of feels a little bit like it is at Club Brugge, where obviously they beat Eupen 4-1, but everyone's beating Eupen, but they are kind of struggling a little bit, and they've like defensively been strong, but then in this one they didn't look too great defensively, but they've actually scored some goals this time, so it's like they can't put a complete performance together consistently back to back.
Yeah, well, I don't know what was more entertaining, to be honest, guys. What was going on in the benches or what was going on in the pitch? It was a really hard fought and deserved win, I thought, ultimately for Charleroi. They kind of got really stuck in and, you know, used their aggressiveness in the right ways, including lots of intimidation and handbags type stuff behaviour on the touchline, which was really funny to watch. Very good natured. You know, not often that both coaches in a game get sent off. So that in itself, I thought, you know, made this really intriguing. Yeah, it's amazing what can happen within a short space of time. You know, only 3 weeks ago, Felix Mazu was coming out, you know, obviously feeling the pressure and said, look, you know, the team are going to have to really start producing some results if we're going to kind of continue working together, which was pretty explicit. That was 3 weeks ago now, and since then they've had back-to-back wins. So yeah, has the tide turned? They've actually got quite a favourable schedule coming up. Charleroi, they've got Eupen at home. Eupen away, Ghent at home, Mechelen away, Westerlo at home, and Molenbeek away. So, looking at that at the moment, if things have turned, there are some points there coming up for them. So, they could be going on a little run here. But yeah, deserved win for them. I think Antwerp only 2 wins in their last 6 in the league now. That would be a slight concern, particularly for a side that were kind of pretty much on cruise control for the whole of last season. It's amazing what happens when, you know, you reach the top of the tree and you win everything domestically and all of the prizes that come with that, and having to juggle with domestic and European schedules, and just maybe those added pressures are starting to impact the squad. And we know what happens when Vincent Janssen goes off the boil a little bit for them as well. Although they have started scoring again, they just seem to be, yeah, it's not quite the well-oiled machine that it was last season for various reasons. But really entertaining stuff, probably more because of what was going on off the pitch than on it.
Yeah, also in addition, like second game in a row for Charleroi, where the second half is the one you only need to tune in. So maybe that's something to take care about in your schedules for next weekend and the weekends to follow. But yeah, well, they basically have the reverse story of Molenbeek. Of course, that last the game before was between them. So they were at the other side of things. They did get the points in the final minutes, and well, here they also did that. So the world really could have looked really different for both sides at the moment as well. We're still close to each other in the classification. But yeah, third win in a row for Charleroi against Antwerp as well. That's definitely taking into account last season as well. Anyway. And yeah, like I said, only need to tune in the second half, it seems, for the entertainment on and off the pitch at this time, even as well. Me wondering what will happen next time, and also whether that extends to away games as well in this case. Yeah, on Antwerp, well, the basic points have been told, have been said already by you guys, but additionally add some more context. Conceding three for the first time in 2023 in the league is what happened here at the back end of last year. I think it was probably the last game of last year. In Westerlo was the last time they have conceded 3 goals. Yeah, that's a steady 11 months ago, 10 months ago now. Sorry. And yeah, well, not that much to add. Indeed, they are a bit in a slump as well. They will need to get out of it. And yeah, their upcoming schedule. Is it next game already that they play against Club Brugge? I forgot to specify which teams Club Brugge actually have to play in the next 3 games, which are in the order I'm not completely sure. So Antwerp, Union, and Cercle Brugge. So yeah, that's definitely something that they should yeah, the Antwerp also needs to pick up points, because both Antwerp and Club Brugge are, well, narrowly in or out, respectively, of the 6 playoff spots at the moment, Champions playoff spots at the moment. Antwerp at the moment having a little bit of the edge of 1 point, and indeed also having a striking problem. Maybe even if they are scoring, Janssen isn't still. I have not looked up how long ago it is since he scored, but it must have been a while since I mentioned it last time as well. Even though they scored 4 at that time against Eupen, that's not the case. And yeah, well, I see it now as well. Indeed, Antwerp play at Club Brugge this weekend on Sunday, so that's definitely a big game for both sides and for both coaches as well.
Yeah, absolutely massive game. That one will be. Speaking of sides that could do with a win, Mechelen are definitely one of those sides. They came into the game against Genk having not won in 4, and they made sure they haven't won in 5. For Genk, it had only been 1 win in their previous 5 games, which had been in the Europa League. So they got things back on track, and they probably would have, if they could have picked a team, it probably would have been Mechelen for them to face. Christopher Bonsu Bar gave them the lead within the first 16 minutes after Kook spilled or saved, up to you. A shot, the ball fell to Bar, he tapped it in to make it 1-0. Brian Hayden was then given far too much space to make it 2-0 just before half time. He was then given the freedom of the pitch once again in the second half to just. I mean, this third goal I think was the worst one of the lot, and I'm sure Scott you'll agree. After Joris has given his, we'll let Joris go first on this one because his side won. But Hayden he picks up the ball, and you can tell he just kind of looks up and he's like, "No one's going to pressure me. I'll just keep driving." Well, not even drive. He just walked forward. No one pressed him. Walked forward. No one pressed him. Looks up. He sees El Kanous. He's like, "Oh well, if I'm going to have enough space, let's give it to El Kanous, who is incredibly creative on the ball." He gets the ball, decides to drive into the box, kind of bounces off a couple of challenges. Him and I think it's Akili are both trying to get to the ball, see which one gets it first. It was actually quite hard to tell which one of them got there first initially, but El Kanous got there first to put it in past Kook to make it 3-0. Ait El Haj then comes off the bench to make it 4 with another kind of screamer to add to his collection in the 91st minute. I only really saw the highlights of this one, but I can't imagine they describe much else. They kind of probably did describe the game, which just, it looked incredibly comfortable for Genk. They finished 19 shots, 9 of which were on target. They win 4-0. Mechelen just looking at kind of their overall statistics at the moment. Top scorers Rob Scoos with 2. Top assist makers Patrick Fluke with 2. And I'm pretty sure they came in his debut game, his first game of the season. So it's just, there's a lack of creativity there. And the defence this weekend was just kind of taken apart by a Genk side that have been struggling. But I think this is just, for Joris, I presume you must think this is great for like kind of just building some confidence from the team and just seeing the ball go into the back of the net.
Yes, definitely. A few pages turned, like you already mentioned as well. Like there was 4 draws in a row, I believe, in the league. Now, finally, another win. That's definitely a very much needed win. And then, additionally, it had been, yeah, well, it had been 6 months since they had a home win in the league, which that ridiculous stat is also finally off the table. So that's hopefully also indeed a page finally turned. But we'll have to see, of course, if they follow up with the result as well. Because yeah, even though it was a really deserved win in the end, the expected goals tell you a different story here. Even though, again, here I feel like the expected goals, yeah, there were a few giveaways, especially one at the final, in the final part where it was already 3-0, where Sadiq misses the ball and gave Fluke a really good chance. Yeah, that upped these stats for Mechelen when by that time, of course, the game actually was already put to bed. And yeah, of course, also some of King's goals. I can't imagine Aitel Hatch's goal having a high expected goal rating, for example. Yeah, it's a bit of a different picture, but yeah, the truth is indeed Genk definitely deserved that win. Although Mechelen had a better spell at the beginning of the second half as well, where, well, given these horrific stats that now finally have come to an end, still gave me a bit of a feeling like, ooh, okay, let them not score. I believe Schoofs also indeed at that time had a big chance where Van der Voort had a good save, and or it's always a bit of vote. I guess the finishing could have been a bit better. A header that he could have placed a bit more towards the far corner. But yeah, it made it possible to. He didn't, and he made it possible for Van der Voort to save it. But yeah, and a few firsts, of course. Aitel Hatch first goal. Bonsoba also getting his first official goal. The one against Cercle Brugge, of course, was well, bounced off of who was in goal at that time. Was it Warleson or who was in goal at that time at Cercle Brugge? That was, of course, an own goal. So that's interesting to see. Bilal Kanu is also now top scorer of Genk with only 3 goals as well, to also put a bit of the Mechelen stat in perspective as well. It's not that all other teams, Genk are in the end, I believe by now the third most scoring team or something like that, and even there the goals are divided. As long as that's the case, it's not necessarily an issue, but at Mechelen at the moment that is not as much the case. And yeah, that's yeah, only 1 draw and 4 losses in the last 5 games. So which also makes them fall back into a relegation playoff spot. And yeah, well, like you mentioned, the defending on that first goal, I feel like, well, you can put a bit of blame maybe on Kuka, although well, I put it more on Van Lerbergen, who let Sakiri play him out way too easily. Kuka pushes the ball not enough outside, but at least still actually a little bit outside. But yeah, also there the defenders were not fast enough to react in comparison to Bonzoba, who was really eager to score that first goal with his right foot as well, which I found funny fact as well, since he is known for cutting to his left foot, of course. Yeah, and yeah, that playing out of the back, Mechelen escaped a few times. Actually, I don't know if they really on any of the goals it really made an impact, but they escaped really a lot of times. And like first time I really see it now, and I'm more involved. Yeah, had a bit of a closer look at that, and whew, okay, that's a really scary sight if your side has to do that every week. Yeah. Also, make Genk at the other end also at one point in the game we gave away a chance because of trying to playing out from the back a bit too frantic, too specifically, that without really looking for that pass and trying to play out. But yeah, just sometimes it doesn't work out, and Nicola have been doing that for, well, basically all season now, and maybe even last season already it started. And it's not always the right choice. I fear, especially, well, they might have gotten away this time, but they don't always.
Yeah, I think just on a Mechlin perspective, briefly, I think the pressure is starting to definitely rise on Stephen Defoe now. You know, Joris was talking about that. What's 4 defeats in their last 5? They've dropped into the relegation zone for the first time this season. Over the course of those 4 defeats, they've scored 2 but conceded 11. And although they're struggling to score, I think there's a more fundamental problem here in that they're creating very little, and beyond that, the club just really lacks a decent striker. To be honest, Mechlin do not have a decent striker at the club. Full stop. I think Brugge is not really the answer. I don't see that kind of turning around. You know, even if things turn for them a little bit, I just don't think there's enough in the striking department. I could talk quite a lot about Patrick Flock and why I love him a little bit, and why he's one of the best players at the club. And I just don't understand why he's not starting regularly. He's got far too much to offer. Some of Stephen Defoe's kind of choices are pretty perplexing. From a tactical point of view as well, particularly around his substitutions in games in recent weeks, you know, and when he's been making them and kind of who with. But yeah, I think there are some pretty alarming signs at Mechlin, and I think the worst thing about them, that I suppose I wanted to highlight this week, was I think they're just not an entertaining side to watch anymore, and that should worry the club, because this is a club who generally are well known for playing kind of swashbuckling attacking football that's generally pretty good to watch. And you know, they've reached such a low at the moment, that they're not enjoyable to watch. And I suspect that, you know, a lot of the season ticket holders are not enjoying what they're seeing at the moment, and they've got a difficult schedule coming up as well. They've got a very hard game at home against Cercle coming up next. They then go to Sclesson to play Standard. They've then got Charleroi, Kortrijk, and St Truden. And the way that they're playing at the moment, I don't see a massive amount of points in those games for them. So the pressure's really on Stephen Defoe to make some things happen and to try and get a couple of wins in there, because they're sliding into an area where the negatives far outweigh the positives at the moment.
100%. And I think Lauerbach, I'm pretty sure we'd have spoken about this in the preview for the season, but it was always a strange signing. And if you look at him as a striker, like I just feel like they've signed him based on his 21-22 season, which is obviously a while ago now, and was in the German Dritte Liga, where he got 12 goals in 32 games. Very, very good return. But last season, he only got 4 goals in 34 games. And he's halfway to that number already with 2. And it's just like, what? It just begs the questions that what was the kind of, what is the thought process there? And I feel like there was a little bit of panic in the sense that they just didn't have anyone, did they? And it was like, well, this guy, he's a cheap option. He's available. Can he just rediscover some form, or maybe more? I think this is kind of a bit more to your point as well, Scott, is they've looked at the rest of the squad and said, right, we've got Scoofs, we've got Heremans, we've got Rabti, we've got Storm. They will hopefully create enough that he will have some chances to score, or they will chip in with some goals. But they're not chipping in with any goals at the moment between them. And it's kind of, I think, those named players, maybe just take out Scoofs because he's a different position to Fluke, but Fluke could come in for any of Storm, Heremans, or Mrabti, and it's just kind of, what is the dynamic there at the moment? Are those kind of players a little bit undroppable because of Football Manager players will remember this, the squad dynamics in terms of these guys kind of leaders within the squad, that you can't really upset them because it will upset the dynamic? And is that something Defoe's trying to manage and not managing too well? But it is a shame that they're not as entertaining as they could be, because on the pitch, on the kind of playing side, they do have the players that could be quite entertaining. But I think for me, the alarm bells were ringing about this game when I saw that Konate wasn't going to be fit to play, because you've taken out their more combative defensive midfielder, and it's just like, this is why Brian Hennon had so much space, allowing people like El Canus to have so much space. And to be fair to Defoe, I don't really know how there's no one in the squad really, is there, to plug that gap? So when Konate's not there, there's no one that can really do that defensive work in central midfield.
Yeah, I think it goes to. I think there's a couple of things that that you're kind of highlighting there, Ben, that are dead right. I think the recruitment on the whole has been questionable. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
We know they're playing with a small budget. We know that. It's not easy. At all. It's not as simple as going out and just kind of getting more or spending a bit more, because they are playing with a small budget. But we've talked about how there are bigger infrastructure issues around choices that the club have made that are impacting that as well. And I think some of the big players at the club, that have been there for a while, the Marabtis, the Scoos and the Storms, who you would assume can step up and produce some goals and assists on their own, they're not performing at the level we know that they can at the moment as well. So once you take that into account, then this is a side that are looking really pretty brittle and blunt at the moment. And as I was saying, the result of that is the entertainment factor just goes completely down the drain, and you've got a real problem there. So I think there are, as I was saying, some worrying signs of some long-term issues for Mechlin, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it leads me a nice little segue into the other game, the next game, sorry, Cercle Brugge against Ghent. Just like a gift, Orban has not scored since the 20th of August. And he didn't score again in this one. He is really, really struggling to find the back of the net. And part of me is thinking, if Ghent had got some of the offers in the summer, should they have just been like, yeah, we'll take those, because his value is obviously going to go down and down and down while he's not kind of lighting it up and stuff. They went to Cercle Brugge where they lost by 2-0. Nothing in the first half in terms of goals. Varlason, definitely his best game of the season for Cercle Brugge, in my opinion. He made some fine saves to keep it at 0-0. Almost immediately into the second half, the unsung hero of Cercle Brugge, and I know that Carlos Avina was always keen to highlight this guy, and he was always shocked that there was never really many offers for him, and they managed to keep hold of him. Leonardo da Silva Lopez, former Hull man, he starts the move, finds Sommers plays it back to him, Lopez runs through and puts it in. He's been coming close over the last couple of weeks to scoring, and he's finally got, I think that was his second goal of the season. Varlason continued to make some decent saves, and then he grabbed himself an assist. It's always weird when goalkeepers get assists. Thankfully, they were playing against 10 men at that point, because Henri Gendelman had come on and he'd got himself sent off not too long after coming on. I don't think it was. Yeah, about 14, 15 minutes after coming on, he slid into a tackle on Darlan, was given a straight red. Perhaps the now former scout of Ghent was giving a Bruce smile when that happened. I don't know. We maybe we'll start on the rumor mill on that one. But yeah, if you don't know that story, just look up the Gendelman transfer. It's a very interesting one. Either way, Varlason, deep into added time, just lumps the ball over the top. Kevin Denke runs onto it against defence at 6s and 7s. Denke smashes it home, and then it's just inadvertently hits Nardi with his knee. Nardi then has to go to hospital. Hopefully, all okay. I haven't seen anything come out that says it's really, really
He
bad, but
he tweeted he was fine afterwards. I think so. Yeah, I think it could have been worse.
It just looked really bad, didn't it? Because he was just lying there for ages, just on the floor. And none of the Ghent players were going around to help him. I think they thought he was just upset about conceding rather than he just a Kevin Denke knee to the face. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I would. Yeah, I couldn't imagine anything of all the knees in the Pro League to take to the face. I think Kevin Denke's is the last one I'd want.
He's a big unit, as Kev, isn't he?
He's a strong bloke. So he gets another goal to add to his collection. Cercle Brugge, the best team in Bruges at the moment, I think it's safe to say, which I'm sure club fans will love to hear. But the kind of the difference in feel around the clubs at the moment, kind of it is all positive for Cercle, into the top 4, 7 points off the top, just completely riding that wave. I know there's a question which we can get to now from Jack Hacken, Feyenoord enthusiast, with Dyler's Club Brugge faltering and his firing coming closer. Maybe you know something we don't know, Jack. Can Cercle keep up the good work for the first time in many years? to top them in the table. I think this could be one of the best chances they have to do that, just in terms of the balance of their squad at the moment, guys. It just looks really, really nice. And I think that's obviously down to the work that Carlos and the club have been doing over the past couple of seasons, just to make sure that they've always got the next player ready to step up. So obviously they lost Abby Francis to injury, but then Van der Bruggen's come in, which is obviously an experienced player. He's playing pretty well. Lemar Eschel started this game. He looks like a decent player. Gaboho started, but then they've got these other guys to bring off the bench. So I think the squad's there, and I guess in terms of a striker, at least they've got someone that can consistently find the back of the net. I would expect Club to still finish above them eventually by the end of the season, just because I think in January they'll go out and maybe get a proper defender in. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, no, I think they're definitely looking. They've definitely, I think, got the best chance to do it this season. I think they're looking better than last season. I think, yeah, like I said at the beginning, also Varlason had his best game of the season. I think that's quite big for his confidence, because I don't know what you guys think, but I think he's always looked like a decent shot stopper. But then sometimes some of his decision making's been a little bit ropey. But when he saves more, he plays better because his confidence is up. But great result for Cercle Bruges. Closes the gap on Ghent as well, who just looked a little bit out of sorts, couldn't find the back of the net. And yeah, I think Big Hein will be frustrated Hein.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with everything Ben said in answering that question. Totally deserved win for Cercle. Lopez was brilliant, really, really good game, really strong. You know, even aside from his output this weekend, he was just great everywhere. I thought one of the things I took away from this game actually was I kind of highlighted recently maybe a worry from Cercle's point of view that maybe they'd been a little bit found out, in the sense that some sides recently had been kind of quite effective tactically against them for the first time. And I think we saw some minor changes this week, minor tactical tweaks by Big Miron Muslic, Cercle's T1, that indicate, that he's just looking to do some little subtle things to make them a little bit less predictable. I thought that was interesting, particularly with him putting in a really strong performance this weekend as well. So I think he's had a look at that and thought, okay, what little things could I throw into the mix here that people maybe don't expect, and that are a little bit less predictable for us. I think he's a very good coach. So I think we're starting to see, a little bit of evolution now in the general template of the way that they play. That hasn't changed, but within that, obviously there's some interesting creative things going on, and I think we saw the start of that this weekend. So that'll be an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on. Big Kevin Denke's now got 9 and 11. They really need him to stay fit, obviously, as Joris was saying recently, heavily reliant on him, obviously, at the moment. But Carlos's successor, Rembert Vromant, the new sporting director at Cercle, obviously will probably have this as his priority issue in the summer. Joris spoke before the international break about the likelihood of Kevin Denke moving on in the summer, which, if he continues anything like the vein he's in at the moment, I think that's a cert. So they will already, I'm sure, have a replacement earmarked there, because they're a club who do their succession planning very well these days. From a Ghent perspective, it was interesting to hear Big Hein come out and admit that he got it wrong. As he said, I think he got some tactical calls wrong, perhaps made some selection issues that were a wee bit questionable as well. And Andrew Hulsager as well, after the game, saying that everything that could have went wrong did. I think that sort of summed up this weekend for Ghent, and first defeat of the season, so not the end of the world for them. But Cercle tend to raise their game when they play Ghent, because they know that Ghent are actually a good side. Big Miron's been on record a number of times saying that he's got a lot of admiration for that squad and for the work that Hein's done there. And Cercle have had some really quite decent results against Ghent over the last couple of years as well. So it's a side that often bring out pretty good performances from a Cercle perspective, and another strong one this weekend, because they're up to 4th.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can say much about Cercles. Potentially it's changed tactics here, because Gent actually play in they're playing a side, and I'm still wondering what Cercle Brugge will do against a side that gives them the ball more and and yeah, and actually doesn't try to play, let's put it like that, doesn't like to play nice football themselves, because that actually does play a lot into Cercles' slightly counter-attacking approach, or at least very, very vertical approach as well, to explore the spaces that inevitably come behind the defenses there. But nonetheless, not going to take too much away from that. Of course, impressive win and impressive performance from Cercle Brugge as well. Actually, total control of the game, even. At fourth spot now. They're 3 points only of second spot, which is Gent, of course. Which also, well, maybe we should touch on that now as well. Opens the first real gap, I think, at the top. Union 4 points clear. I think that's this season the first time that anyone has been more than one game clear. Of course, whether that's significant or not at the moment. Well, of course not, but it's better to have that gap. Of course, it leaves a little more room for errors, and especially a little less room for errors for the teams behind, which was, for example, Gent, and we'll also talk about another one really soon as well, that have dropped points this weekend. But also it's getting old. But Cercle Brugge, I'll keep repeating it, I guess. Still no draw. So that's the 1-0 in the whole classification rankings. That's still standing. It's either win or lose for them, and that does bring you, if you win more than you lose, that automatically brings you a lot, of course. In a season where a lot of the draws actually have taken place, and in the games that are not where they were not involved in. Like Scott said, first loss of the season for Gent, first shutout for Gent, and I wanted to add to Ben's stat as well. Orban hasn't scored since the 20th of August for Gent, but Kuipers hasn't scored since the 13th of August in the league. That is, of course, but both of their strikers that they could have sold for a lot of money have not, really provided these goods, the kind of goods that they were providing last season, despite actually starting the season quite well still. And obviously, Gent are still in second place, so it's not that their whole performance has been, team performance has really been suffering too much of it. But in difficult games, they could really use some of those goals again. To put them over the line. Yeah, and Ben was also talking about Warlosson. I also saw on FotMob that he had the highest rating of the game, I believe, and I was a bit surprised by that, because his shot stopping was a bit questionable at times as well, like a bit like Bolat the day before. Punching the ball, or like a bit too much, or like taking the ball in 2 times, but making it like not advertently, so like quite inadvertently, that he was fumbling the ball a bit, but then he could take it on a second try again. So no harm done. But I was still a bit surprised, but maybe he gave himself some more saves like that as well. Nonetheless, good win for Cercle. Nothing to worry about on the long run for Gent yet, except these striking numbers there. For Kuipers and Orban, they need to find their scoring boosts again.
Yeah, they definitely do. And I think Varlason's rating was boosted by that assist because he just lumped it over the top, and Denki ran on the score and he gets the assist. So I think keepers always get a nice little bonus from that.
Yeah, that obviously must have played a major role in that.
A nice little booster. Let's go to Liège for a game of two halves between Standard and Anderlecht. Obviously, no love lost between these two sides and their fan bases whatsoever. It was Anderlecht who had the better of the first half. Kasper Dolberg finishing from a Torgan Hazard cross. Absolutely no one picked Dolberg up. Literally 6 minutes later, Anders Dreyer was unmarked again as well, and he found the back of the net. Looked like Anderlecht made it 3 literally instantly afterwards. Pinching the ball off Standard, running through and grabbing a third, but Leone, I think it was adjudged to have handled the ball, so that one was ruled out, which caused a little bit of controversy and a little bit of frustration. Half-time comes, Hoofkins probably chucks a teapot around. Standard come out of the break with a lot more energy, a lot more fight, and they get right back into it when Steven Alzat makes it 2-1 in the 52nd. Hayo Kawabe then with a really, really nice finish in literally 3 minutes later to make it 2-2. And the comeback's complete basically 5 minutes later when Nathan Ngoy absolutely smashes the ball into the back of the net to make it 3-2. Just a mental kind of reversal and comeback from Standard Liège. And I think it was Sacha Tavolieri on Twitter was saying, like, sometimes when that stadium gets going and the fans get behind them, they get that momentum, it can feel a little bit unstoppable. And for that kind of 10-minute spell, it did definitely feel like that for Standard. Anderlecht thought they should have had a penalty in the second half, but they didn't get that either. So there was a lot of frustration for Brian Riemer, a lot of joy for Carl Hufkins, who, when Ngoy put that ball in the back of the net, just had his head on his hands, just couldn't believe what his side had actually gone and done. Little question I'll chuck to you guys from Ollie at It's Really Ollie. He said, is Hufkins' current run not feeling slightly similar to Dyler's last year at the beginning of the season? How long can Standard build their hopes on rebuilding completely and somehow finding a solution that works with a motivating coach and good loan players? Even the 100% win percentage with Steven Alzate. So, yeah, obviously your opinion on the game, guys, but then kind of what do you think about the comparison to last season and this idea that they can just grab these random players on loan, not random players, but they bring in this quality on loan, and it just seems to work, and it definitely has at the moment.
Well, I'm glad that you've already used the word mental, because this was a mental game, and I just wonder. I mean, there's a lot of questions here. What exactly did Carl say at halftime? I know that he made some tactical tweaks because he mentioned that he did, and they certainly had to do that for a number of reasons. But I just wonder generally what Carl said. I'd be fascinated to kind of hear more about that. A wild game, which, Anderlecht absolutely dominated the first half, and I thought were really strong in their transitionary play, the sort of stuff that I think Standard would like to be able to do themselves to kind of other sides. They were really efficient, and I think if they go in 3-0 at half time, which they were very, very unlucky not to do, ultimately, then I think the game is over, because the life's been sucked out of it. So they were unfortunate in having that third goal chopped off. Just to kind of round back to the penalty that Anderlecht thought they were due for a second, I think that's pretty clear. Now, I think Jonathan Lardo, in fact, has even come out himself, the match referee, and said that, he felt Anderlecht should have had a penalty, and that VAR let everybody down there, which I thought was, refreshingly honest. But yeah, just a wild game. Brian Reimer very frustrated, actually, straight down the tunnel on full time, speaking afterwards about his own side's mental collapse, as he put it, which was really frank. And interestingly as well, Anderlecht were due to have a rest day on Monday, but Brian Reimer decided to cancel that and bring everybody in for some light work and move the rest day to later in the week, which I think he's moved it to the Tuesday. So he wanted to have a meeting, particularly about that second half, and the mental approach to it more than anything else, because he was quite honest about not being happy about that. And strange. Ben said game of two halves very much. I didn't see Anderlecht Standard turning this around at all. Football is a beautiful and strange and highly unpredictable thing at the best of times. It's one of the reasons why we love it. And this game really did exemplify that. We spoke as well after Standard's win against Club recently at Sclesson that maybe this could be a significant point for them in the is this a momentum switch for them? Can something start now? Well, that's two huge back-to-back wins and two quite big statements, which relates to the question that Ben was asking about. It's quite similar to Ronnie Dyler having some success early on against the bigger teams last season and struggling against sides you maybe would expect them to pick up points against. We don't really know. That's how I feel about it at the moment. They've got a decent schedule coming up, and the atmosphere around the place should have changed. But we did highlight as well when me and Joris were talking before the international break that I think key to the whole season for Standard being decent, if it's going to turn out that way, is going to be being really strong at home. And they've certainly done that recently. In a way that they're going to have to do kind of more regularly. I'm not sure whether this is the beginning of something, a long, consistent run of performances. I never think it's a particularly good sign when any side can perform well against so-called bigger sides, but really struggle against sides that they should be getting, something off. So it's kind of too early to say. But Carl, what did you say at halftime?
Well, Van Heusen in his interview mentioned that at least some part of it was like, if you get that first goal, then we're back in it and you'll go win it, something like that. Then the stadium will get behind too. Well, exactly what happened in the end, ultimately, is of course as well. But that's 7 games unbeaten for them now in a row. Hoefkes next to Deila with club to mix these names again as well, of course, which is for one of them more of a good sign than for another, and ultimately for both of them, I guess, a bit in the middle nonetheless. But the really fans, the stadium was quite silent after the 0-2, which is no surprise, and especially after that this eventually disallowed the third goal for Anderlecht. There actually the stadium was dead, but that really changed after that, especially after that first goal, and maybe already a bit early in that second half. That's definitely something special. Definitely how this atmosphere and what's going on the pitch is going on. Yeah, for Anderlecht, then that's their streak broken, so no 10 games in a row unbeaten. And more worrying, maybe more like this imploding after that first goal. That yeah, yes, but the fragility that's in that side, and that actually you'd hope that they would not have that anymore, since they traded in a bit of the of youth with more experience over the past few transfer windows, and and then it's surprising for a bit more experienced side that they really even they get through that as well, of course. And for Standard, well, it's the schedule is looking very tough, to be honest. But if they get through these next games, then the run in is, of course, that could be something that they could play in their favor. They play Gent at home, away at okay, then a cup game, then Mechelen at home, but from then it starts Antwerp, Genk, the return game between Anderlecht, the derby against Charleroi. Well, derby, or the Walloon derby against Charleroi. So if they get through these games pretty much unscathed, then who knows what their season will bring. But they definitely brought their season alive over the past few weeks. I guess since the end of the transfer window, where they had finally did some business, and it's paying off a bit as well so far.
Yeah, definitely so far. It's looking pretty good for Standard Liège. While we were away, I guess we could say Leuven parted ways with Mark Bryce. Didn't seem to affect them too much because they actually won a game and they won it quite well. They beat St. Truden 4-0. Insigne and Bruins both started. That seemed to be a good way to go for the home side. Yusuf Maziz with the through ball to Insigne. Insigne made it 1-0. Bruins then missed a chance to make it 2, but they were given a penalty in the 22nd minute, which Steve Slivers slotted in to make it 2-0. into the second half, I think it was Stoikers had a decent chance to get one back for St. Truiden, but he couldn't quite manage it. Hamza Mendel then decided to show his goal scoring prowess. Kento Misao with the assist for his first, and then Hamza got the next one with an assist from Nachon and Singi to make it 4-0. So a bit of a statement win, guys, I guess, for Leuven, and a clean sheet is kind of the bigger thing that we can take away from this. But ironically, Mendel after the game dedicated his goals to Mark Bryce. I just don't understand what the situation is there, because there was all those rumours coming out like last season that Shivers and Mertens and loads of them wanted him gone. They didn't seem to really be playing much for him, but then they're like, "Oh yeah, let's dedicate this one to him." It's all a bit weird, but at the end of the day, I think yeah, I mean, it's just an important win for Leuven. Important to see the ball go into the back of the net. First clean sheet since they beat Kortrijk a couple of match weeks, I guess we could say, ago. Ends a run of 2 successive defeats on the bounce as well. Beating a team that we expect to be in and around them, despite how well St. Truiden have played. We expect them to be in and around Leuven, kind of scrapping to avoid that bottom 4. So a nice statement win, and one I didn't actually see coming. I didn't see them being able to romp to victory in this one, but it shows that, yeah, maybe there is kind of, we should expect more from them this season, and this is kind of the performances that people will now be expecting every week, and potentially they found like a formation system that will actually work with Misao in that central midfield spot alongside Schreivers.
Well, this is what happens, I think, when an interim T1, in this case Leuven's Eddie Van Emel, gets things absolutely spot on tactically. I think he was talking afterwards about how the game plan was to kind of kill St. Truiden on transitions, and when you bear in mind that St. Truiden have been playing really expansive, pretty open, good to watch football so far this season, but being guilty of, losing the ball in kind of key areas because of that at times, and the balance not necessarily being right. What Leuven really did here, I think, to win this game convincingly was win a lot of the transitions in key places in the game and make St. Truiden pay for it, which was actually kind of quite impressive. Like Ben, I didn't quite see the margin of victory coming, but I think the game plan was absolutely spot on in terms of exploiting where some of St. Truiden's weaknesses lie at the moment. I think from Torsten Fink's perspective, I think the match report remains the same as it's been for a few weeks. A lot of very, very good football played, but not taking their chances, and they simply have to address the striking issue in January. They failed to get somebody in before the end of the window there over the summer. It remains their number one issue, because they're playing a lot of great football. They're good to watch. They're not taking their chances, and they leave themselves vulnerable in transitions because of that all over the pitch. And we saw a really good example of how that can, really, really hurt you this weekend. Interesting to see if Leuven can actually build on that, or whether that is just a really good tactical response to playing a particular side this weekend. They are apparently taking their time, Leuven, on appointing a new T1, so don't expect anything on that imminently, everybody. That seems to be the word on the street, as they say at the moment. But yeah, impressive stuff for them, and Torsten Fink will be sitting there praying that he gets the striker that they really badly need at the moment.
Yeah, probably their worst performance of the season with Sinterad, and also at the back, Suzuki could have done a bit better on a few occasions. And well, also, of course, there was a penalty, for example, which also shows that your defending could have been a bit better. Winless in 4 now as well, and conceding 4 in consecutive games as well. That's potentially also an additional worry that's coming for Sinterade. Only two points off of the relegation playoff spots now, but to not be too dramatic, that goes for half the league, literally. So yeah, that doesn't need to say that much yet, but it might show that maybe to like Molenbeek, they maybe should have banked a bit more on that good start of the season. But yeah, we'll still have to see how it all evolves over the course of the season. Of course, if they get out of this slump quickly or not. Yeah, for the Leuven, then they are still behind Sint-Truiden. Nonetheless, of course, on basis of this game, a bit of a better story for them. They are actually out of this relegation zone, albeit only 1 point then. So, well, again, does not say that much necessarily, but they definitely needed a win again. And yeah, that's especially gives them some more time to look for a successor for Mike Bass, of course, as well. Yeah, and Mendil wreaking havoc was indeed an interesting thing to see. He's done that a few times already this season. That he goes through, and this time he actually scored a hat trick. But on one of the occasions, he got the ball from Boeren Larsen, who was clearly offside. It's too bad for Mendil, but in the end, he did get his second goal nonetheless. So I guess that he won't be too mad about that either. And a good win for Leuven with only 34% ball position as well. So it shows that you don't always have to have the ball to win games.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And shout out to anyone that put Hamza Mendel in their fantasy football team this weekend, because, yeah, you're psychic, I guess. I don't know why else you would have done it. Yeah, that's it for the Pro League. Let's quickly jump to the Challenger Pro League. Scott, plenty of moving and shaking down there this weekend.
Yeah, things have been changing up a little bit there. We've reached Matchday 9 in the Challenger Pro League. Score roundup, as usual. Start with Beerschot won 2-1 against Lommel. Denza beat Jong Genk 3-2. Anderlecht Futures won 3-0 convincingly against SL16. Lierse won 1-0 at home against Serang, and what was actually quite a big result for them down at the bottom this weekend. Zulte Waregem beat RFC Liège 1-0. Dender and Oostende drew 1 each, and Beveren got a very big 3-0 win away against Club Next. Frank Baran and Patro Eisden played a 0-0 draw. What's happening in terms of the bigger picture? Well, Zulte have gone top ahead of Lommel, courtesy of Lommel's defeat. Beerschot beating Lommel means they're up to third. They're in a decent run of form at the moment, Beerschot. Denza, likewise, they're up to fifth now after their win this past weekend as well. Their form's not too bad. I suppose the big story, really, in a way, for me of the weekend is Beveren's 3-0 win against Club Next. The pressure's really been building for a number of reasons. Beveren, obviously, they were in the drop zone at one point this weekend before their game, so they really needed that win badly just to relieve a little bit of the pressure, which, to be fair, is still going to be there. I think they need to go on some kind of a run to kind of convince a lot of fans that, maybe things will have turned. A lot of angry Beveren fans still around at the moment, but they'll be a little bit more relieved this weekend. So that's probably the big story for me. Top scorers at the moment, still Adriano Bertaccini, everybody, at RFC Liège, but he has been joined as joint top scorer now by a certain Zino Gano, who everybody will know.
Yeah, big Zeno still banging him in. It's always good to see. You mentioned Beerschot making a little move up, and obviously they've got that game in hand, which is against SL16, which at the moment, if they won that, they'd actually go top. So they're kind of sneaking their way into returning to the Pro League. They want us to kind of see them back. So Ryan Sanusi scored as well. Big fan of Ryan Sanusi. Good to see him getting himself on the score sheet. Before we head off, guys, just a quick there's 2 more questions from Twitter, but they're kind of the same, so we can kind of talk about them at the same time. Basically around Union, from Justice or at Darth Squidge. How tight is it going to be this season before Union screw up the championship again? Or will Club Brugge missing playoffs mean there's actually a chance they'll win it? Free So Rare says, who can stop Union themselves? ? I mean, Scott and I, we're probably quite famous for our ridiculously early title predictions, whereas yours is a little bit more level. We like to go early. I think one year we said Charleroi could win it, which I don't know what we were.
That was me with a hot take.
So I'll go to you
for
first, Scott, for the. I'll go to you
Cool
first for
down
the
quite
drama and the hot
quickly.
top. Yeah, what do you guys think, kind of, in terms of Union's chances of sustaining it? I guess we have kind of spoken about it a little bit, but yeah, just a quick 10-20 second answer on those.
Well, it's obviously too early, but they're certainly kind of cruising to a degree at the moment. I had a conversation with an agent I know recently who did happen to say to me that he thinks they're finally going to do it this year. He just thinks they seem to have kind of struck gold with all of the recruitment yet again, which I agree with him with as well.
Yeah, definitely. But again, too early to tell. But they're in a good position, of course, and it looks like. Well, at least I believe I had them a bit lower in the table this season. I'll have my hands up high already for that. I'm sure they will be up there, but what is up there, we'll see at the end of the season, I guess.
Yeah, I think they've got everything they need to do it, but I don't know. I think after the last 2 seasons, I don't want to jinx them or do anything like that. But yeah, keep the questions coming in. We do love to try and answer them as best we can. We hope we do that. But I think that probably is all for today, guys. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. I've got a nice cold Belgian beer on hold for me now after a long day. Always good to sit down and chat about the weekend's action. Best of luck to all the Belgian sides in European action this week as well. You know what to do. Bring us back some coefficient points, guys.
And yeah, well, nothing much to add there. So yeah, bring back some points, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Unlike Scott, I was thinking of, should I go watch my team play? But Reading already 1-0 down to Fleetwood, and the game kicked off at 8, and 2 minutes in, they were already 1-0 down. So after sitting through them losing 4-0 on Saturday, I don't think I'm going to do that. So it's the Great British Bake Off for me. Do I have to put myself through anything stupid like that? But anyway, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you've got any questions for us, please do get in touch in the usual ways as well. But once again, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.